Hey guys, for today's video, I'll go over Citlali's kits, artifacts, weapons, teams, and constellations so that you can reach her full potential. Onto her kit, her skill states that Citlali deploys an opal shield and calls forth Itzpapa, dealing Night Soul aligned AoE cryo damage. The opal shield's damage absorption scales based on Citlali's elemental mastery, and absorbs cryo damage with 250% efficiency. When it is deployed, it will cause Citlali to briefly be affected by cryo, and after using the skill, Citlali gains 24 Night Soul points and enters the Night Soul's blessing state. During this Night Soul blessing state, when Itzpapa leaves the field, Citlali exits the Night Soul's blessing state. When it comes to Itzpapa, Itzpapa will follow Citlali, and if Citlali has at least 50 Night Soul points, Itzpapa enters the Opal Fire state and continuously consumes Night Soul points to whip up a Frost Fall Storm that follows the character and attacks opponents within its AoE, dealing Night Soul aligned cryo damage. When Citlali's Night Soul points are fully depleted, Itzpapa's Opal Fire state also ends. For her ultimate, it states that she deals Night Soul aligned AoE cryo damage, and that this restores a set amount of Night Soul points for Citlali, and also summons a Spirit Vessel skull near a maximum of 3 opponents within the AoE, with 1 skull for each opponent. Spirit Vessel skulls explode after some time, dealing Night Soul aligned AoE cryo damage and restoring a set amount of Night Soul points for Citlali. For her passive, it states that while Itzpapa is on the field, after nearby party members trigger the frozen or melt reactions, the pyro and hydro resistance of opponents affected by that reaction decreases by 20% for 12 seconds. Additionally, Citlali will regain 16 Night Soul points. Night Soul points can be restored this way once every 8 seconds. For her other passive, it states that during her skill, it increases the damage by 90% of Citlali's elemental mastery, and that during her ultimate, it increases the ultimate by 1200% of Citlali's elemental mastery. In addition, when nearby party members trigger Night Soul bursts, Citlali regains 4 Night Soul points. So, how do you actually play Citlali? Well, Citlali is going to act as a Night Soul generator for MiHoYo, a melt enabler for pyro characters, a resistance shredder and elemental damage booster for pyro characters and hydro characters, or as a nuke DPS, since her ultimate that scales off of elemental mastery has a massive multiplier, meaning that she'll mostly be acting as a support and sometimes as a decent nuke DPS. This means that you'll just have to use your skill, then your ultimate for her rotation, and that's it. For her Ascension Materials, you're gonna need 1 out of the 2-star Shivata Jades, 9 out of the 3-star ones, 9 out of the 4-star ones, and 6 out of the 5-star ones. You're also gonna need 168 of the Quinepa Berry, 18 of the little Saurian 1-star materials, 30 for the 2-star and 36 for the 3-star, 46 of the Talisman of the Enigmatic Land, which you can get by defeating the Wayward Hermetic Spirit Speaker, and for her Tana materials, you're gonna need more of the little Saurian materials, the little Star Boss material from Arlechinos' boss, some crowns, and the philosophies of the Kindling Tana materials, which is the one with the little fire in the middle. For her required stats, she needs to prioritize 2 stats, energy recharge and elemental mastery. For her energy recharge, it highly depends, but on average, she should need around 195% energy recharge in solo cryo teams, 185 on duo cryo teams, 125% to 150% on a newbie-led team, and 150% on a Cylonan team that also has at least 1 other Natlan character. After meeting these requirements, that's when you'll pump her with elemental mastery. For her artifacts, the Cinder City set will typically be her best in slot if there isn't another character on your team who also has the Cinder City set, since the bonuses provided by the set do not stack. This set will give Citlali 6 energy, which is extremely good since she does require a ton of energy. This set also provides a 40% damage boost whenever she triggers a reaction to the elements involved in that reaction. For an alternative set, the Tenacity of the Millilith set is also viable because it provides an attack buff and that increases her shield strength. For an alternative to the Tenacity of the Millilith set, the Noblesse of Oblige would also be decent since it does increase her ultimate damage and also increases the attack of your allies, but it doesn't have any shield strengthening capabilities like the Tenacity of the Millilith set, which is better than the ultimate damage bonus provided by the Noblesse of Oblige, since her supportive capabilities take priority over her sub DPS capabilities from her ultimate. Not only that, but these bonuses won't stack if another character on your team is utilizing the same sets, so there's a chance that these bonuses won't trigger. Another viable alternative would be the Instructor set, since it provides her with 80 elemental mastery, which will help her with her shield, which scales off of elemental mastery. Not only that, but your teammates will also get 120 elemental mastery every 8 seconds she triggers a reaction, which will help tremendously with melt reactions. For her main stats, you're gonna want energy recharge or elemental mastery for her sands, elemental mastery or or cryo damage bonus for her goblet, and elemental mastery or crit stats for her circlet. For her substats, you're gonna want energy recharge until you reach your required amount, then elemental mastery, then crit stats, then attack percentage. For her weapons, obviously her signature weapon is going to be her best in slot. It provides her with a massive 365 elemental mastery, and it also provides the active character with a 28% damage boost for 15 seconds when Citlali creates a shield. For another alternative, the Trilling Tales of Dragon Slayers would be her other best option, since it gives the next character you switch to a 48% attack boost. For another alternative, the Wandering Event Star would be viable because it has a 165 elemental mastery main stat, and it provides an attack buff based off of 24% of the equipping character's elemental mastery, which other party members get 30% of. For another alternative, the 8000 Floating Dreams weapon would also be viable because it has a 265 elemental mastery main stat, and it provides the equipping character with 32 elemental mastery for every party member that has the same elemental attribute as them, and 10% cryo damage boost if they do not. Additionally, all party members other than the equipping character will have their elemental mastery increased by 40. Another decent alternative would be the Favonius Codex because it has a 45.9% energy recharge main stat, and it regenerates energy whenever she crits. For other alternatives, any weapon that has elemental mastery as a main stats would also be decent. For her teams, Citlali will be really good with Arlecchino, Mavuika, Skirk, Nuvilette, Chaska, along with practically every DPS that benefits from her melt enabling, interruption resistance, and hydro and pyro shred. For Arlecchino, Citlali is an amazing teammate for her, since Arlecchino heavily depends on her normal attacks for her damage, thus she's at constant risk of her DPS being interrupted. Not only that, but her healing capabilities are also pretty restrictive, meaning that the shield that Citlali provides would be extremely beneficial for both her survival and her DPS. Also, Citlali enables for Arlecchino to play with the melt playstyle, which is extremely powerful compared to her other playstyles like Overload, Vaporize, and a traditional Hypercarry. For Mavuika, Citlali is also extremely good with her because she allows Mavuika to constantly melt her ultimate slash, as well as a lot of her charge attacks during her ultimate, which increases her damage by a substantial amount. Not only that, but Mavuika also does the majority of her damage through charge attacks, which can be interrupted similarly to Arlecchino. Thus, Citlali's shield can help prevent that, so that Mavuika can maximize her damage. Citlali also helps Mavuika regenerate around 50 fighting spirit every rotation, which isn't insanely powerful in comparison to someone like Cylonen or even Pyro MC, but it's still a substantial amount compared to other supports. For Skirk, although Skirk does have a ton of interruption resistance for her normal attacks and has an alternative nuke DPS playstyle, and where she doesn't stay on the field for long, she still benefits off of the interruption resistance provided by Citlali's shield, although again, not as much as the other DPS. Citlali is also cryo, which helps Skirk achieve her passives' void rifts and damage bonuses. Not only that, but Skirk is typically paired with hydro units as well, which Citlali can help by reducing the enemy's hydro resistances. For Nuvilette, Citlali is extremely beneficial, since again, she provides a shield that provides interruption resistance, which Nuvilette, probably more than any other one of the DPS that she synergizes with, requires the most. Not only that, but Citlali can also reduce hydro resistances. Also, since Nuvilette's passive requires for hydro elemental reactions to take place, Citlali can help in this matter by triggering the freeze reaction. For Chaska, Citlali allows Chaska to melt attacks in a team that has another pyro unit in it. Not only that, but Citlali's shield duration is long enough for Chaska to have practically 100% interruption resistance during her skill, which other characters like Layla aren't able to do. Citlali also reduces pyro and hydro resistances, which will buff Chaska's hydro and pyro damage in case she has a hydro and or pyro character on the team. For her constellations, her C1 states that when she uses her elemental skill, Citlali gains the Opal Star Vestments effect until Itzpapa leaves the field. During this time, she will obtain 10 stacks of Stellar Blade. When a nearby active character other than Citlali deals damage using normal, charged, or plunging attacks, or elemental skills and bursts, 1 stack of Stellar Blade will be consumed to increase the damage dealt by 200% of Citlali's elemental mastery. After nearby party members trigger Frozen or Melt, Citlali will gain another 3 stacks of Stellar Blade. This effect can only be triggered once every 8 seconds, and using the elemental skill will reset the Stellar Blade stacks. Additionally, when Citlali is using her leap or is aiming or using her charge attack in midair, her phlogiston consumption is decreased by 45%. For her C2, it states that Citlali gains 125 elemental mastery, and other characters shielded by her opal shield or who have Itzpapa following them gain 250 elemental mastery. Additionally, when her elemental skill is used, nearby active characters will also be granted an opal shield. Also, she will decrease the pyro and hydro resistances by an additional 20% more for 12 seconds after a party member triggers frozen or melts when Itzpapa is on the field. For her C4, it states that while her skill is active, when Itzpapa's Frostfall Storm hits opponents, an additional Obsidian Spirit Vessel Skull will be summoned. When a Spirit Vessel Skull summoned this way explodes, it deals 1800% of Citlali's elemental mastery as Naito aligned AoE cryo damage and restores 16 Naito points and 8 energy for Citlali. This effect can trigger once every 8 seconds, and this damage is not considered as elemental burst damage. For her C6, it states that after Itzpapa is summoned through Citlali's skill, he will always be in the opal fire state, and when Naito points are exhausted, this state will not end. Additionally, when Dawnfrost Darkstar is used, Itzpapa will consume all Naito points, and while it is on the field, it will continuously consume Naito points. Each Naito point consumed this way will grant Citlali 1 Sifra of the Secret Law points. A maximum of 40 such points can be gained, and each point Citlali possesses will grant all nearby party members a 1.5 pyro and hydro damage bonus, and increases the damage Citlali deals by 2.5%. When Itzpapa leaves the field, or upon using Citlali's elemental skill again, all Sifra of the Secret Law points she has will be removed. For my recommendations, I would recommend getting her to C2, then getting her R1, since her C1 increases your team's DPS by a huge amount, since the damage boost she provides is a flat damage boost that scales off of both Citlali and your other characters, similar to Shenhe's attack buff. For example, let's say your Citlali has 1000 elemental mastery, and your carry has 200% crit damage and 100% damage bonus. Assuming that your carry will crit, she will do 12,000 more damage every time she consumes one of her stacks. Consider the fact that she gains 10 stacks every time she uses her skill, and can gain 3 more every time a frozen or melt reaction is triggered after 8 seconds, and this constellation will definitely increase your damage by more than 100,000 every rotation. Her C2 is also extremely powerful, since it increases the elemental mastery of your units by a substantial amount, and it decreases the enemy's pyro and hydro resistances even more, to the point to where she's pretty much a Night Soul generating pyro and hydro Kazuha who has a shield and also enables melts. Her R1 is also extremely powerful, since it does provide her with a ton of elemental mastery, and it provides the next character that she switches to a pretty much unconditional 20% damage boost, which is pretty big, but her other alternatives are also pretty good, so you could get away with not prioritizing her R1 before prioritizing her C2. For her C4 and her C6, I would only recommend getting her C4 if you're going for her C6, which is extremely powerful, but in my opinion, it's not worth it unless you have a ton of money, passion, and time, considering that it's worth almost $2,000. Regardless, if you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe if you haven't yet. I would greatly appreciate it. Goodbye.